How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. Here's the cryon at CNN, the little script under the bottom of what they're talking about. Hegseth defends firing of military leaders, rips diversity efforts. Telling you, let's inject that straight into our veins. This, by the way, this is the sort of stuff I voted for. The willingness to fire federal bureaucrats, I am totally down with this agenda. The left constantly says, Erickson, if you don't like it, why'd you vote for it? Because the alternative. Yeah, I'm willing to criticize my own side, always have been. No one cared until Trump was president. But I'm willing to criticize and also willing to praise. And there's far more to praise from the Trump administration than there would be from a Kamala Harris, whatever it would be. It wouldn't even be an administration. It would be garbage. So, yeah. It's kind of wild to see where the left is in this sort of stuff. And let me tell you another thing I voted for, using the FACE Act. I do not like the FACE Act. The FACE Act is a 1994 piece of legislation that the Democrats were able to steamroll through Congress before the Republicans for the first time took over in 40 years. It's the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. The law bars demonstrators from using or threatening force to intimidate, injure, or interfere with people who are seeking or providing reproductive health services and people who are seeking to exercise their First Amendment rights at a place of worship. It's never been used till the Biden administration decided to aggressively arrest pro-lifers. Joe Biden set the precedent for this, Democrats. Joe Biden set the precedent. Joe Biden dragged pro-lifers, including a wheelchair-bound grandmother, out of her house in the middle of the night and sent the grandmother to prison, to federal prison, for praying at an abortion clinic. She was in a wheelchair. And the Democrats argued, and by the way, a very progressive judge, federal judge, sentenced her to 2 years in prison and argued that she was inside the abortion clinic, and though people could have walked around her because she was in a wheelchair, her mere presence in the abortion clinic praying was enough under the FACE Act to send her to federal prison. And off she went. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, Democrats. You're always talking about, oh, the president, oh, the humanity, oh, the president. You're the ones who set the precedent. You set the precedent. You used the FACE Act. You decided that you would use the FACE Act and prosecute pro-lifers. And so Donald Trump has decided he's going to use it too. He's going to use it. The FACE Act has been very little used. But the FACE Act, the New York Times calls it novel, a novel use of the FACE Act, except it's actually in the law. It's not really a novel use. You can pull up the Wikipedia entrance if you want. I'll read this to you. The law signed by Bill Clinton prohibits the following three things: the use of physical force, threat of physical force, or physical obstruction to intentionally injure, intimidate, interfere with, or attempt to injure, intimidate, or interfere with a person obtaining an abortion. The use of physical force, threats of physical force, or physical obstruction to intentionally injure, intimidate, interfere with, or attempt to injure, interfere, or intimidate any person who's attempting to exercise their First Amendment right to religious freedom at a place of worship, or the intentional damage or destruction of a reproductive health care facility or a place of worship. They literally threw a grandmother in federal prison who was wheelchair bound, claiming that she used physical force, the threat of physical force, or physical obstruction to intentionally injure, intimidate, interfere with, or attempt to injure, intimidate, or interfere with a person trying to obtain an abortion. Because she was praying in the abortion facility, she was found guilty of intimidation for praying, a wheelchair-bound 70-something-year-old grandmother. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. As I said, this is the New York Times. Today, the Trump administration is repurposing a law traditionally used to shield reproductive health clinics to pursue a civil case against pro-Palestinian demonstrators taking a side in a dispute that roiled New Jersey last year. The Justice Department Civil Rights Division on Monday filed a lawsuit against two New Jersey advocacy groups and 6 people who protested outside a synagogue, accusing them of engaging in a coordinated effort to intimidate and disrupt Jewish worshipers at a religious event. Wasim Khanun, the chairman of one of the groups, American Muslims for Palestine, New Jersey, declined to comment. In the past, he has said that such protests have nothing to do with the Jewish faith and are directed at the policies of the State of Israel and its treatment of Palestinians. The other defendants could not be reached. The events the suit describes took place last November in West Orange, New Jersey, 20 miles west of Manhattan. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators gathered to protest a real estate fair at which property in Israel and in the West Bank was expected to be offered. Such shows have been held for decades, but they've taken on a new symbolism during the war in Gaza. The November protest was particularly contentious. Masked protesters holding plastic horns called vuvuzelas and signs reading "Stop the Sale of Stolen Palestinian Land" clashed with pro-Israel counter-protesters outside Congregational Torah, an Orthodox synagogue. Ultimately, 2 pro-Israel demonstrators were charged with aggravated assault, including one, Moshe Glick, who the authorities said hit a demonstrator in the head with a flashlight. The Justice Department's lawsuit, however, takes aim squarely at the pro-Palestinian demonstrators, seeking to bar them from protesting outside houses of worship and asking that they each pay tens of thousands of dollars for violating the law. Harmeet Dillon, God bless her, she's wonderful. She's the head of the Civil Rights Division. She says it represented the department's first use of the FACE Act against demonstrators outside a house of worship. It may be, but the law clearly allows it to be done that way. The FACE Act specifies it cannot be construed to block exercise of free speech. However, if you block access to a house of worship, well, the FACE Act can be used against you. In this case, you should understand that someone, the vuvuzela, it's the horn, they played it at soccer matches and the like, and it ruptured the eardrum of a Jewish person who was headed to the synagogue. Just for perspective here, the New York Times plays that down, but it literally was blown into the ear of a Jew headed to synagogue and ruptured his eardrum. By design, it ruptured his eardrum. I'm trying to find this basic story here that documents some of what was done. Regardless, I put it on social media earlier. Yeah, it caused physical damage to a person. Physical damage. And so they're stepping up to use the FACE Act. And the New York Times is like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. How dare they do this? And yet pay no attention to the physical injury caused to the Jew headed into synagogue. You should know, by the way, that Republicans have for years called on Democrats to use the FACE Act to protect places of worship, and the Democrats have refused to use the FACE Act to protect places of worship. The Democrats have solely used the FACE Act to target pro-lifers. It was only in the Biden administration that the FACE Act was used to actually imprison pro-lifers. So turnabout's fair play. The New York Times went to great pains to downplay the law and claim it's a novel use. Never mind the fact that it is explicitly written into the law it can be used to protect places of worship. Should tell you everything you need to know about this and which side the New York Times is on. They legitimately targeted Jews headed to synagogue. Well, Eric said it was a real estate fear. Some of them were going to worship at the synagogue. And the protesters outside didn't distinguish between those going to worship and those going to the real estate fair. They didn't distinguish it. And because they refused to distinguish, there's no reason for the Trump administration to distinguish. Turnabout is fair play here, guys. I've told you over and over and over again that both sides set precedents that the other uses. This is a precedent set by the Democrats. One of many precedents used by Donald Trump. Look at the Comey prosecution. You got Mike Flynn, you got Jeff Clark, you got who else who were harassed by the Biden Justice Department? You got Donald Trump. Donald Trump may be the biggest one. The Democrats tried to sue him in every state they possibly could to keep him off the ballot, to throw him in jail, to take his money, to take his businesses. It was absolutely campaigning by lawfare. Only Democrats refused to be intellectually honest enough to acknowledge what was going on. And now they're like, you can't do this to James Comey. No, you people told me that no one is above the law. And apparently you had a footnote in there that said, except James Comey. Turnabout's fair play. You may not like it. You cannot stop it. You did it first. You refused to be intellectually honest enough to admit you did it first. You did it first by prosecuting Trump and Flynn and Clark and all these others. Now you did it with the FACE Act and the pro-lifers. Now it's being done to you and you don't like it. You're squealing like a stuck pig. Now conservatives, Republicans, Trump supporters, what you need to do once you've had your fun is kill all this legislation and gut these powers. Because at some point, there's no such thing as permanent majority in politics in America. At some point, the Democrats will come back. And there will be hell to pay unless you gut the power now. Unless you gut the power. You've got to get a clue on this. If you leave the power out there, it's going to be used again by the Democrats. You got to throw the ring in the volcano. You got to melt the ring of power. Because once you lose it and the Democrats get it back, there's going to be hell to pay on your side too. Both sides are writing checks they can't cash when the other side is in power. And the only way to diffuse this situation is not to continue to bludgeon the opposition, but to, after you've bludgeoned them, as you're doing now, make sure that they can't bludgeon you by stripping yourselves of the power to keep doing it. And if you take the power away from yourself, through an act of Congress, the Democrats can't get it back. And you're in a perfect position right now with this shutdown and leverage. And the way the Democrats have boxed themselves in is to force them to help you get rid of the powers that both of you use against each other. My buddy Adam texted me or emailed me and pointed out something about the FACE Act, and I totally made it on a phone call earlier and then forgot. Technically the Democrats have used the FACE Act to protect churches because Planned Parenthood is a religious sacrament and the high priests of the sacrament of abortion for the Democrats. So they have been using the FACE Act all alone for religious purposes, and now the Republicans are just applying it to synagogues, not just abortion clinics. So all keeping it within the religious community. The phone number here, 877-973-7425. When we come back, I will take your phone calls. We just don't have time right now. I can tell you that the trap is being set this afternoon. I am told and have reason to believe it is true that the Office of Management and Budget today has informed federal employees that those people working on reduction in force notices and layoffs will be considered essential personnel who will be required to continue their work if the government shuts down. In other words, in the past, if you were in charge of firing people, you stopped working when the government shut down. But now the Office of Management and Budget is telling you, completely within their discretion and power to do, that you will stay at work and continue working on your lists of employees to fire. The Democrats are walking into this trap. They know they're headed into this trap. They cannot stop walking into this trap because the Democratic base doesn't understand what's about to happen and just wants to see the Democratic Party fight, fight, fight. They will fight themselves right out of public sector unions that are about to be taken over by MAGA. MAGA will have gone for the non-governmental organizations that fund the left-wing extremist groups. They're investigating Soros, and now they're about to gut the public sector unions too. The Democrats walking straight into this trap. Y'all, I've told you how my friends at Americans for Prosperity did so much to get Donald Trump's tax bill passed. They were amazing. They rallied the largest crowd of Americans to call members of Congress to support the president's tax cuts. And the bill is the law of the land, but they're not resting on their laurels. They're pulling out all the stops to get Congress to pass a permitting reform bill. With bipartisan support, it would speed up all sorts of energy and mining products and projects. Unlocking the natural resources we need to build America's future that creates great paying jobs, makes energy more affordable, drills and extracts precious metals, minerals, rare earths, oil, natural gas, everything we need. I'm telling you, when it comes to fighting for more economic freedom, Americans for Prosperity is relentless on this. And these days, relentless is what you've got to be. To see what my friends at AAP are up to, if you want to join them in this fight for energy in this country, go to prosperityispossible.com. That's prosperityispossible.com. Sign up with AAP today and get involved at prosperityispossible.com. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Let me hop to the phones here. Teresa, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. So I just wanted to let you know that the very first offer that the government gave to federal employees, in my opinion, was the best offer, the fork in the road. Well, the fork in the road ends today. Today is my retirement date, and I got paid every 2 weeks. I knew that the money was budgeted for our salaries, and it was never an issue with me thinking I wouldn't get paid. And I didn't have to work, and it worked for me. And I today is my last day as a federal employee, 32 years. So
wow.
I just wanted to share that with you.
Good for you.
Yep.
So and the irony is, if you stayed like another 24 hours, there would be a day without pay in there because you'd be a federal employee having to go through a shutdown.
Yeah, so I turned in my application, I certified it, and I'm just waiting for my 80% check and then my 100% pension check.
Good for you.
And yeah, so I'm excited.
So now what's next for you? Are you retiring or are you going to go find something else?
I am still young, so I want to find something else. I like health and nutrition, so I want to do something with that. I wrote a book in 2023, so I'm working on a second one. I want to take a cruise. I want to learn golf. I want to
I
play
hope you learn better than me.
pickleball, kind of stuff.
Well, good for you. Yeah, listen, work is good for your soul, so don't just sit around resting on your laurels. But I would definitely, I'm not a cruise person myself, but all my friends who love it. So take a cruise, enjoy yourself, do better than I do at golf, please. But get back in the workforce, too. Find something to do now that's rewarding for your soul. And make the best of it. Good luck to you. Thanks for sharing. Stuart, you're going to be the next caller. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Eric. Thank you for taking my call. I'll be brief because your time and message is important to all of us. I believe that Trump and Hesketh bringing the generals together at Quantico, that was a masterclass in communication, because if they had done that message any other way, by letter or video conference or anything else, we would not have heard about it. And the goal was to provoke a response from the Dems and to tell the rest of the world that the U.S. military is coming back. So was it worth the cost? Absolutely.
Well, so I would counter in just one small way, not to dispute with what you're saying, Stuart, but had they done it like in a video or had they done it in a letter, it would have leaked to the American media. And they probably would have lit their hair on fire even more than they did by him doing this the way he did it, which would have actually been funny to watch, the absolute conspiratorial meltdown. Can you imagine if they did it by like secure video that they all had to watch and somebody filmed it with their cell phone? One, we kind of probably exposed all the leakers and booted them out of the military, but also the absolute meltdown from members of the press corps had they done it. I will say, though, I got a text message from a friend of mine who is a ranking personnel in the National Guard, who said that his view is that Hegsis' message got lost in the tone and the tenor. Leadership requires you to talk to everyone, not at everyone. That's a difference. If your message gets lost, you didn't effectively communicate. He's not wrong about the standards and the things being merit-based. We all want a merit-based military, but it was shrouded in all the catchphrases of woke, DEI, and gender-based. He could have done all of this on a much smaller scale without the cameras around, but it's all about the clicks with this administration. He also doesn't need to uproot the entire garden at one time. You can start with smaller changes and work your way up, but upheaval seems to be the calling card for his policies. That's from a ranking member, friend of mine in the National Guard, who, by the way, agrees with everything Hegsis is doing, just would have gone about it differently. So your mileage may vary on how he did it. But again, what's interesting is whether you agreed with the approach or not. Even this friend of mine who disagreed with the approach, it's like, yeah, I'm here for what he's actually doing because it's needed inside the military. And yes, I think it is needed inside the military. Now, I want to switch gears. I really, 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 really want to spend some time on this. Yesterday, the President of the United States, Benjamin Netanyahu, announced a 20-point plan to bring peace to Gaza. The basics are that Hamas must disarm, hand back all the hostages, living or dead. Israel will give a lot of Hamasniks who are arrested back to Gaza. Hamas will go away, give up their arms, and the Palestinians will transition to a new government and an outside board of peace controlled by Donald Trump and Tony Blair that will oversee the redevelopment of Gaza for the Palestinian people. And there are a whole lot of people who are completely ignorant of history, who do not understand that for a very long time the Palestinians have rejected statehood to keep fighting the Israelis. I don't expect you to believe me if you're on the left. But I want to play you the audio of someone who was actually involved in trying to build a two-state solution and was able to get the Israelis to agree to a free, separate, and independent Palestine, only to have it rejected by the Palestinian leadership. I give you former President of the United States, William Jefferson Bill Clinton.
Look, I think what's happened there in the last 25 years is one of the great tragedies of the 21st century. And when I tell the young people, for example, who are understandably in America, let's say they're super sympathetic with the Palestinians. Well, they've been killed. A lot of those Palestinians have, and all they know is that a lot more Palestinians have been killed than Israelis. And I tell them what Arafat walked away from, and they can't believe it. I said, oh yeah, he walked away from a Palestinian state with a capital in East Jerusalem, 96% of the West Bank, 4% of Israel to make up for the 4% that the settlers occupy that were beyond the borders in the 67 war. And I go through all the stuff that was in the deal, and they it's not on their radar screen. They can't even imagine that happened. And I tell them, the first and most famous victim of an attempt to give the Palestinians a state was Prime Minister Rabin, whom I think loved as much as I ever loved another man. And so Rabin, he dies, and then Shimon Peres is defeated in the election, and where the rest of it is history. But you walk away from these once-in-a-lifetime peace opportunities, and you can't complain 25 years later when the doors weren't all still open and all the possibilities weren't still there. You can't do it. It's just...
Your voice just cracked when you said that.
Yeah. I'm an old guy. I have my regrets. That's one of them.
Old guy, I have my regrets. Let's lay this all out there. Bill Clinton was able to get the Prime Minister of Israel and Yasser Arafat to the table, and the Prime Minister of Israel offered all of East Jerusalem minus a small section where Israeli settlers were. So Yasser Arafat would get all of the West Bank, would get East Jerusalem, and 4% of Israeli territory to have a free Palestinian nation. Yasser Arafat turned it down. He walked away from the table because he couldn't give up the fight. Yasser Arafat wanted to vilify the Jews and fight the Jews and kill the Jews. And the Jews offered peace. They offered East Jerusalem as a capital for a Palestinian nation, most of the West Bank, 96% of the West Bank, and then 4% of new territory within inside Israel to make up for where the settlers had moved inside the West Bank. And Yasser Arafat said no. You would have had a Palestinian nation, but Yasser Arafat, on behalf of the Palestinians, said, no, we want to fight the Jews. And then Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated by an Israeli who was incensed that he would give up this deal, that he would give up East Jerusalem. It cost the Israeli Prime Minister his life, and Yasser Arafat nothing. And the people of the Palestinian territory, everything else. Cost them everything else. That's the true and honest history that progressives who are championing the Palestinian cause in the streets don't know about, don't care about, don't want to believe. They could have had everything they wanted, except Israel would still exist. And at the end of the day, ultimately, the Palestinian leadership and the people who protest on support of Hamas, they don't want the Jews to still exist. They don't want the Palestinians to not be in charge of the whole thing. They want river to sea. And because they want river to sea, they get nothing. Now here comes this president, Donald Trump, who's offering a new deal for Gaza, not the West Bank. The West Bank, it's confusing for some. The West Bank is to the east. It is on the east side of Jerusalem. It is the western bank of the Jordan River. It is East Jerusalem. Gaza is in the southwest, bordering Egypt. And in Gaza, the President of the United States says if Hamas will lay down its arms, its surviving members will get amnesty and will even be set up to live abroad if they so choose, or they can stay in Gaza and be peaceful. But they must give up their weapons. They must give up all the hostages and the bodies of the dead hostages, all of them, not in increments. They must give them all up. And then if they give them all up, the war will be at an end. Israel will let out of prison a massive number of people from Gaza who will go back to Gaza. And for every one Israeli hostage body, living or dead, that is turned back, Israel will give up 15 from Hamas. And then a new government will be set up. And the people of Gaza will have peace. And an internal defense force will be created that will provide law enforcement protection. There will be no military. There will be law enforcement. There will be policing. And a new board of peace will be set up, chaired by Donald Trump and Tony Blair, and it will set about the redevelopment of Gaza for the people of Gaza, who will not have to leave the country, but will be able to be there and learn how to build and be taught useful job skills to build and construct a new Gaza. That is the offering of the President of the United States of America to the people of Gaza and to Hamas. They will get their own territory. They will get peace. But Hamas has to go away. Most of Hamas is dead. The question now is going to be, do the people of Hamas inside Gaza want peace or fighting? Yasser Arafat turned down a Palestinian nation in the West Bank. He turned it down. He could have had it. He could have had what he pledged he wanted, a free and independent Palestinian nation flying the Palestinian flag, and he chose to fight the Jews. The question now is, what does Hamas do? Do they do what Yasser Arafat did? Or do they put the people of the Palestinian territory first? We're watching history in the making. We're watching Hamas decide. And the president has said if Hamas rejects this, Benjamin Netanyahu has the president's permission to exterminate Hamas. And I got to be real honest with you. The greater part of me hopes that Hamas rejects the deal and that Israel exterminates Hamas, letting the monsters, the murderers, and the terrorists have amnesty and go free to continue plotting the death of the Jews, which is what they will do, seems too much for me. But this is still a far better deal than any ever conjured since Bill Clinton in the 1990s came within a breath of Yasser Arafat of setting up a free Palestinian nation. But Yasser Arafat said no. And now we deal with the consequences of that no all these years later. As we head into a government shutdown at the hands of Democrats who want funding for NPR and PBS and health care for illegal aliens, notice how no one is screaming about all the people who are going to die. Isn't that funny? Every time Republicans try to shut down the government, the Democrats and members of the media talk about all the people who are going to be harmed, all the people who are going to die. The Democrats want the shutdown now, and it's all about, fighting for health care and, we're not going to get economic data for the Federal Reserve. That's about it. No deaths this shutdown. No one's going to die. It's a Schumer shutdown, so nobody's going to die out there. It really is remarkable to see the spin, which is also a tell that it's going to be hard to blame the Republicans for this as it plays out, because the Republicans have advanced legislation to keep the government funded. It's just the Democrats don't like that legislation because it doesn't fund NPR and PBS and health care for illegal aliens. And the Democrats say this is spin, that it's not true, but it actually is true. The Democrats' health care provision that they put forward would fund health care for illegal aliens. They've refused to change it. And it would fund NPR and PBS, and they've refused to change it. So you people are about to see the government shut down because white progressives want you to pay for their newscasts and for the health care for their nannies and gardeners who they refuse to pay. It's remarkable that this is where we're headed, but at midnight tonight, assuming there's no deal, there will be a shutdown. But the shrill rhetoric about people dying because of the shutdown, it's not happening because the Democrats and the media both know the Democrats ultimately will get blamed for what is a Democrat shutdown. Now, I need to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You get 3 of them. You save $200. You get them for less than $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. And they're an air purifier, so it gets rid of dust and pollen. It gets rid of all the stuff floating in the air. It kills 99.9% of bacteria and viruses, and then it wipes out odors. No odor can stand up to it because it produces ozone that goes out into the room. It touches the odor particles and destroys the odor particles. So litter box odors, smoke odors, dirty diaper odors, cooking odors doesn't stand up to the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You get one for upstairs, downstairs, your basement, your travel bag, your RV. They're highly portable. You can hold it in your hand. You can even plug it up in a car with a USB cord or under your laptop. I've used it that way. Or plug it directly into the wall, and it just wipes out odors. I've used it in hotel rooms and rental cars to wipe out smoke odors. I've used it on my back porch to wipe out bad odors. It just works. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com.